What are you watching on television right now? I gotta tell you, for myself, it's been a little frustrating. I constantly stay on top of what's the new best things, and I feel like right now, there's a lot of new opportunities out there. It's just not in film. I try to stay on Netflix and see what's new on Netflix. They just don't update their inventory enough for me. Whenever I find something that's good, I devour it, and then there's just nothingness, and then I go back to I resort to watching the same stuff a lot. I enjoy watching the same classics, like that '70s show, and certain things that are not really relevant right now. Like I keep going back to Rescue Me, and it's like fifth season, and it's not pressing concern for me to finish that show. It might be something I'll finish eventually in my lifetime, but I mean, like, and just like with Miami Vice, in its fifth season as well, and it's its last season. There are certain shows that I go back and, I'll find my place again in the show, but, finishing it is not a necessity at the time. So, I like to explore all new stuff, and there's certain things that I'm trying to find whenever I'm looking for story, whenever I'm looking for whatever particular vision I need to see. But yeah, so I try to find the greatest battles. I try to find things that pertain to me. So certain things, certain shows I'm watching now consistently are Black Sails, are right now I'm watching 12 Monkeys. Rain has been amazing. We're all waiting on Game of Thrones to come out. So Vikings is probably one of my favorites right now. So we're entering second quarter of the year. So it's March and we're going into April. So there's all new shows starting now. Like Game of Thrones starts. A lot of places that I watch stuff, they have a rating system. And I'm pretty sure it's based on IMDb's rating system. With IMDb, it has a pretty even medium. They sometimes for certain things it's like higher or lower for me, but you can usually, for me, it's a good start to look at the rating. I like stuff with a higher rating. I see some shows that are like 4 or 5 rating, and I probably never start a lot of those shows. I still like, for me, there's certain shows that still hit in 6 and 7 that are just purely entertaining for me. But I mostly see that I like things in the 8 to 9 range, and then you hardly see anything in the 9.5 range or anything like that. Yeah, I always tell people that everyone is watching things for different reasons. For me, everyone's answering different questions. For me, everyone's looking for different things. They're trying to explore different emotions. So, your tastes are very much unique to you. As for me and my tastes, I enjoy a lot of human interaction, but for me, the plot has to be ever progressive. I like how things constantly change in some shows, but in some shows, I dislike how things don't change enough. Like in Breaking Bad, for me, being in the same town, in the same small settings and stuff. I mean, it was just too much of the same thing all the time. There wasn't enough change. So, but like in Vikings, things change dramatically from episode to episode, and for me, it just pumps so much more new blood into the story. So for me, that's enjoyable. For me, in the subjects and in the plots and in the concepts and the stories, I like to stay fresh. So I always like to be going to the new best plot, the new best whatever, the new best conquer. So For Vikings, we're always conquering something new. We're always exploring somewhere new. So at any point where we're like acquiring things and then we're just intend to stay for a long time, that to me in a plot of a series is never really going to work. You know what I mean? And if it does, it's got to be certain people, and certain people have to be elsewhere, and blah, 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 blah. You know? So, like, in Vikings, we're always going to new places. We're always conquering new lands. Like, as a king, his greed is never stifled. So he wants more and more and more, and he feels like he's entitled to the world. So, as a man who has very similar ideals to most of these protagonists, I enjoy the views of protagonists who have a hunger for the world, because I too crave those things. So, like I was saying about the preferences, I mean, it just goes into like what you're exploring in the world, the messages you're looking for, and the things that you want to portray and stuff. So, like, another really good one that, I can't wait to see more of is Marco Polo. There's some that I have still yet to check out that I'm wanting to explore, like Borgia, but I have no idea what it's about, honestly. I don't know who that person is in history. There are other historical things that I've gotten to explore recently that were really amazing. So the History Channel does Vikings, right? And the History Channel just recently did this mini-series, I guess, because I can't find any more. Like, it was like a 3-night thing, but I thought there was going to be more, and I'm not sure if it finished. So anywho, I anticipate it to be a series. I just can't find much about it. But it was the Sons of Liberty, and they're telling the story of Samuel Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Paul Revere. The show is told amazingly, and like the Vikings, they're telling history in such a manner where it's not hey, this is how. They're not drilling it into you. Like, you're experiencing it in a first person perspective. You're getting the flaws of the characters, you're getting the characteristics of the characters. So, but they are people that you grow to love and fight beside, and you go through all of these plots with them, no matter how far-fetched it may be. I would say the more far-fetched, the better. I mean, in our case, because like, us as an audience for a film, like, who wants to experience a boring story? Like, I don't. You're not gonna go through Sarah Plain and Tall with her. Like, we want to rumble in the jungle. So I mean, yeah, with these characters, like, you assume them, like. So it's like Samuel Adams in this Sons of Liberty is a very prosperous businessman, and as you can tell, the story's about the American Revolution. So, well, his business gets foiled by the politics and bureaucratic stuff that's going on with the government, with Britain, and with them trying to settle these new colonies and to do it independently, free of Britain. So his money gets tied up with all of this stuff, and all of them, eventually it becomes life-threatening. So it's not just about money and business anymore. They're on the run from the British, and they're hiding weapons and stuff like that. So I mean, you become very a part of this history that, when you're told it in social studies and in history, you're not as reproachful because you don't care. So I mean, I would say, as I grow, I begin to care more. I mean, I vote and stuff now, but when I was younger, even when I had turned 21, I guess, I probably didn't care. So I mean, the more vested you become in your community and in history and in culture and in the social factors of life, you know. Um, so then you could appreciate these conflicts more. So, I experience this a lot whenever I'm showing someone younger what I feel like is probably more of an adult theme show. Younger audiences are not as receptive to obscurity and ambiguity and nuances. As we grow, we begin to understand that those things are a part of life, and we actually begin to love the flaws. I begin to love the flaws almost as much as I begin to love the. So they're hand in hand. The needle on the edge of what's right and wrong is very, very close, and that line is so thin. When you're young, everything is black and white. Everything is this and this and this, and why can't this work this way? But you know, as you grow, you can do these things and they will still have these outcomes, and there's no way to avoid that. And there's no way to pre-anticipate any of those things either. So, as you learn and grow, you learn and grow to understand that these nuances are something that you cannot live without, you know. They're also in your stories. They're the best things about your stories. These nuances are what the things that stand out the most are the things that you probably don't understand, and then they're concepts that sit with you for a long time, and then eventually over a period of years the concept grows on you, and then you begin to understand it, and then at points and times the same concept you understand in different ways, so the same concept can continue to grow and manifest into other forms as well. Yeah, so one of my latest obsessions has been Spartacus, and it was glorious. Um, Spartacus' story was told very amazingly. Yeah, like I was mentioning before, like when that material came out, I don't think I was adult enough to grasp the concept. So it's just like, it's kind of like you're a little kid, you're like, oh my god, there's so much nudity, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But it's like, that's all you hear about it. But then, like, when you watch the material, it's such like a huge oversight, like, as I become less sensitive to things like that through a series of shows, and it was a step up. It was like, I forget the chain now, but I forget which one led me to Game of Thrones, but there were a few before then, and I think they were movies. But yeah, like things like 300 and stuff like that, and it's actors and stuff that you follow, honestly, and then The Lord of the Rings. Game of Thrones, like, for me, I avoided Game of Thrones for 4 years. I didn't start it till its 4th season, so yeah, I mean, like, before that, there were just other pressing things. I had known the characters from other places, so Henry Cavill who is the Superman now in the Man of Steel, and who's going to be Superman in the Batman vs. Superman film. So for me, I had a vested interest in the character post what I had known of him. So I'd never known him from Tudors. But Tudors is another show like Reign, who at the time I didn't really care about the history, but I magically found Reign, and then I think from Reign I went to Game of Thrones, or maybe it was vice versa. But yeah, so the vested interest that you have in certain actors help you overcome certain barriers when it comes to selecting titles. So once I had seen Henry Cavill in Man of Steel, I was more receptive to going back and watching Tudors. But since I had already started and loved Reign, I was more receptive to watching Tudors anyways. So, and then with things like Game of Thrones, I think that'll actually open the doors for Reign. So I'm not sure if Reign came first. Oh no, and then there was Hell on Wheels. So Hell on Wheels opened the gate for historical stuff. Well, recent historical stuff. I've always had a major, yeah, I've always had a major want for historical content. Just hasn't been anyone really feeling that need. They come in phases, and then other things come in phases, or maybe that's me and my selection. So, I try to stay not in my own world, but I try to watch everything that pertains to everything relevant. So I know most of the main actors who I like, and I think that are actually doing things for the industry. So it's not like, oh, I just watch the ones that everyone watches. No, it's the ones that I think that are actually fueling the industry and that are doing the things that I think are making the industry progressive. So I like directors that are progressive and actors that are progressive. So in my mind, I'm selecting the best lineup always of each. I do go as far as to speculate as to who I think might be good to work with, or who I would like to see work with this person. But obviously, some of those fantasy things will never happen. But it's really cool when you do see them happen and you don't expect it. Yeah, so now that I'm all about like Reign and Spartacus, I've gone back and I started to dabble in other shows that I felt were too obscure when I was younger, but now that I'm more able to handle more obscure and adult content and enjoy it in the sense that I'm still getting satisfaction in the plots, the people that can't handle the obscurity they eject themselves they eject themselves from the suspension or the active entertainment of the content because it's striking a primal chord saying, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. It's like in the back of their mind. It's like a coach saying something or your parents saying something. So in their mind, they're doing that to themselves saying, hey, this isn't cool. So they just stop watching it. And then what's funny is that the same people watch similar obscure content in other ways. So if anyone gives you crap about watching Spartacus, I almost guarantee that person likes Orange is the New Black, and there's just the same amount of obscurity and messages that come across. Obviously, Spartacus is in such an age where that stuff existed in that age, and it's kind of like slavery. Well, it's all about slavery. That's all about Spartacus. So I mean, if you've watched even any relevant recent slave stuff, that sort of thing happened right up until the 19th century. So I mean, for us to think that we're so far removed that's just naive. So for me, the content is ever relevant. The world may slip into things like that in the future. So I mean, like, for me, it's interesting to see how the past works. And as a writer, I don't have any sort of stories where there is slavery, but let's say that the need comes up where I need to be savvy on that. I'm absolutely savvy on it based upon the relevant content on all of my journeys in film and in television. So, and those are far. I watch anything and everything, and I gather as much as I can. Information wise and analysis, and I implement these concepts and stories and ideas into models that could possibly work for scenarios for any content, mine is mostly for web series. So we're starting a zombie web series right now, and my searches for the battle content, my best finds right now have been like Fury, Master and Commander, and then like even silly ones like Battleship. Um, but ones that use tact against the enemy. So like in Battleship in particular, they steer the enemy into the sunlight, and the enemy doesn't know the terrain and doesn't know how to fight on the surface of the earth. So, and they're aliens they're aliens, I think, from the water. Yeah, so they're not UFOs, but I think it's LFO. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, it's the UFOs from the water. But anywho, so it's kind of like the abyss. Well, an alien race like comes up from the ocean or something, and anywho, our navy battles their navy pretty much or whatever, and some of the battle tactics that they use is the creatures are light sensitive, and as are humans, but they pre-anticipated this tactic, so they opened fire when the aliens were blinded by the light, because the aliens are just not used to fighting. I mean, you can only do that once or twice in a battle before the enemy learns anyway, so and I'm pretty sure they learn pretty quick, so it's like they only got like one good shot off, due to something like that. But that battle tactic that it takes to come up with something like that is something that I wish to implement in my character. So whenever you see my protagonist work in action, I hope to implement that same sort of tact, so I just want to be one-upping my enemy, but I want to always be in constant battle, and I want to not have such long dramatic stretches of things that don't really pertain to a progressive plot, so it's like we understand that establishing a hospital in a wartime is dramatic, and just how much drama there is, and then just people crying and blah 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 blah. So but the story for me is not about that. So it's like, in my apocalypse, the city is overtaken, so we're taking the city back, so it's kind of like a 28 days later structure, where it's like we're taking the city back, we're taking something back and we're trying to re-implement it. But mine is going to be on a very smaller scale, so it's going to be a specific city, so it's like a very specific city, like the city I live in. So I'll take the city I live in, for instance, and, we're going to, so say we'll doomsday it, and this is the only city that I care about in the entire world. So, I mean, that's it. That's the job of the colonel in this city. So it's like, well, if we were in The Walking Dead, for me, The Walking Dead, like, I don't understand what they're doing, so there's never been an overall arc told, like, what are we doing, you know what I'm saying? So initially, like in most shows, I like to know where we're going, you know what I mean? Some shows never hit it, a lot of shows, you know what I mean, works out perfectly, but a lot of shows are just open-ended. A lot of the content that I like is not, some of the best shows that I've ever seen end in 4 or 5, season 4 or 5 almost always, or 3, but the ones that go on 6, 7, 8, most of those are open-ended and end horribly, like The Sopranos, Lost, like, but yeah, stuff that ends good, like Spartacus ended amazingly, like, I mean, I anticipate a lot of other shows too as well, but, Sons of Anarchy didn't end well. For me, Dexter, Breaking Bad didn't end well, So for me, it's important to know where you're going when you start. So, yeah, the best content that I find is that it is solid all the way through, or Acts 1, 2, and 3, no matter how long that arc is, over how many seasons, Obviously, each season is going to have its own arc, but then it'll pertain to a large overall arc as well. So, I like to see the progressive plots. I like to see who the person is at the beginning of the film, or who the person is at the beginning of the series, and just who they become at the end of the series or the end of the season, and then at the end of the series. So yeah, I mean, you could only I devour things in such a manner that these things are relevant for those reasons that we wish to portray something just as amazing. So, like I said, I watch things in the 8 range, 9 range, in the star rating system. So it's like, if you're not going to create content in that same era, you know, yeah, you ought to be. You know what I mean? Like, you only hope that you could achieve better than the best that you watch or devour. I mean, because this stuff is past stuff. Like, in a progressive world, this stuff is the best stuff, however long ago. So if you want to be the best stuff in the future, then you have to beat this by a long shot, as I intend to do so, and I hope there's other filmmakers watching this show in particular. Um, that's why I devour film. I hope you all have similar voices. Yeah, if in similar tastes. So, I hope that the shows that we review, that you get the same things out of. I'd love to go over the concepts with you about the shows in particular. So this episode is meant to be more of a broader, hey, this is what's going on this quarter, and these are the things that I'm looking forward to. So these are some of the things that I've been catching up on, and I'm trying to catch you up on what I've been doing since my last post. So yeah, let me know some of the content that you're working on yourself. Let me know, you can go and read some of my content, and you can see, like, hey, through my shows, I can kind of see what he's talking about. So let me know if that's like a thing that you would be up for. The novel that I wrote, it's called Techno Mode, and my name's Joseph Serrano. So, and you can find that on Amazon. And you can find it on Kindle. I'll post a link of it in the URL description below. And yeah, so you can read that. I have a friend at work that's been reading it. I have a few friends that have read it. So yeah, I mean, I like to talk about the concept with people. For me, I don't do a bunch of marketing on it. I more so work on the next creative stuff. So for me, it's not about what I'm doing, it's that I'm doing what I want to be doing. So I want to be doing a lot, and I work on multiple series at once. So, like I mentioned the Zombie Project before, I always start everything out as a script, and then, I would translate that into a graphic novel, comic, or a literary novel, and probably all 3 or 4. So yeah, I mean, I tried to make the most out of my material and content, and it gives me different avenues to work on, because I'm trying to better myself at a lot of things artistically. So not only in writing, but, with the filmmaking and the designs and such as well. I think that it's amazing that more and more directors and more actors are going toward series. For me right now, there's not a lot in theaters that is worth going and seeing in theaters. So, but I love that format, though. I just wish that there were more. So for me, a series, they're 40-minute episodes, and then some of them are 22 episodes a season. So it's just like there's so much content, So I just get to love these characters more and more and more, So it's like, with the film, you can watch the same film a million times, and I do, like, with a lot of films, I constantly revisit themes I constantly revisit shows. So I mean, that to me is important, that I'm always sharp on themes that make up who I am, you know? I'll always watch the same things, you know, I'll always revisit certain shows. But yeah, um, the the building of the franchise is important to me, and that I hope to accomplish such things with mine. That's why I release them in multiple formats. So it's just like the expanded universe, I think that you should work on. There's examples where it's worked to people's advantage, and then there's examples of where it's worked to certain people's disadvantages. You know, if you don't control that extended content, you know, so there's questions that are going to be asked, and you're going to want to answer them for people. But I think you should still do it in a linear way. So obviously, if you tell a story, they're going to ask what are the origins. If you don't include the origins, so don't be that guy and release a prequel after you've released the content. Just release the content in a linear way. You know, so if you start a story and it's like 6 years into your content, go back to day one, tell the day one story, and then do the 6 years later, even though you came up with the 6 years later first and you're eager to get that out, you know? Um, yeah, it's just, well, that's just the way things ought to be. It diminishes its own content when you release something and then you release something post that's pre. So yeah, I mean, it's just, it comes off like very unwell handled, unwell thought, you know? So it's like, if you want to be in the higher 8-9 range, you know, you can't pull like 6 or 7 type moves. You get me? I mean, for instance, let's take Sin City into well, for example, let's use Sin City. So, A Dame to Kill For is supposed to be a prequel to the original Sin City. It just didn't have the impact that Sin City had at all. You know, it's not as relevant, and it doesn't really matter. But it's posed, so it's like, it's supposed to be. I mean, you would think a follow up to an amazing film would be, well, a killer film, right? So, but no, it's not. It's like not even as good as the first. So it's like, well, what's the point? I mean, honestly, if you would have just got people excited with the first one and then wowed them with Sin City, then wouldn't that be the right formula? So it's like the first one's always great, and then the second one's supposed to be killer, and then the third one's supposed to be like stellar or whatever, you know? So it's like supposed to ascend in that order, you know? So it's like, don't release something amazing and then release something subpar and then be like, well, put the subpar one, and it's like throwing. It's literally like throwing crap on a brand new polished car or something, you know, like it's like it doesn't make any sort of sense, you know. Instead, you know, whenever you could have had done something in another way to make it more progressive. An unfortunate thing when you're writing in that sort of manner, but you learn to appreciate it. So, I mean, whenever I started my zombie story, I started years later than where I am now, but I eventually figured out if I didn't go back and tell this, then, well, I would be the fool at the end of that game. I think it's funny because I think when it works that way, people might not like what it will become.